The continuing threat of annexation by Israel of parts of the West Bank would constitute a most serious violation of international law, deal a devastating blow to the two-state solution, close the door to a renewal of negotiations, and threaten efforts to advance regional peace and our broader efforts to maintain international peace and security.
We must avoid, at all costs, unilateral actions that could create deeper wounds and further enhance the already deep resentment and mistrust that prevails in this conflict.
There should be no ambiguity on this matter. Annexation constitutes a flagrant violation of international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, the Fourth Geneva Convention, and various UN resolutions. It put in jeopardy the two-state solution. Israel's insistence on continuing on the path of annexation will defer any prospect of peace, create regional instability, usher in a new cycle of violence, and eventually undermine Israel's security interests.
Between the two states, we therefore call on the parties and any other state to refrain from taking any unilateral action that would jeopardize the two-state solution.
This attitude reflects an insistence by the Israeli government on the policy of intransigence, a complete disregard of international law, and the blatant violation of Security Council resolution and the agreement signed with the Palestinians. It is commonly recognized that the denial of rights, persistence of injustice and oppression, and continuing aggressive practices against defenseless civilians lead to frustration and exacerbate feelings of helplessness and persecution, which can generate further complexity of the situation in the region and undermine the prospects for peace.
Will not recognize any changes to the pre-1967 borders, including Jerusalem.
First, the occupation by force and annexation of Palestinian land is illegal and must end, in accordance with the provisions of Resolution 2334. The continuation of Israel's colonization policy, which has been established as a system of administration of the Palestinian territories, is equally illegal. The disproportionate use of force against often unarmed Palestinian civilians, including women and children, is unacceptable and contrary to international law.
We firmly believe that the two-state solution is the only viable solution to the conflict, with establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state on the basis of pre-1967 lines, with Israel, with its Jerusalem as its capital.
Once again, the Israeli government against such a move that would not be without consequences on the relations of the European Union with Israel. We will not recognize any changes to the June 1967 lines unless agreed to by both parties. In this regard, let me recall that Resolution 2334 creates obligation for third parties by calling upon member states to distinguish between the State of Israel and the territories occupied since 1967. We remind the importance for all parties to respect existing agreements.
Is ready to fully engage in efforts to safeguard principles of the settlement, which are enshrined in relevant UN Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, the Madrid Principles and the Arab Peace Initiative. They provide basis for creation of an independent, sovereign, territorially contiguous Palestinian state within 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Mr. President, we say no to violence. At the same time, we say no to annexation of Palestinian territories.
China is also deeply concerned about the reports of the plan to annex part of the occupied Palestinian territory. Such a plan, if implemented, will seriously violate international law and the relevant UN resolutions and imperil the two-state solution. The two-state solution is the only viable way forward to solve the Palestinian question.
And as we have said many times, we will not recognize any changes to the 4th June 1967 lines, including with regard to Jerusalem, unless agreed to by Israelis and Palestinians. And we will continue to distinguish between the internationally recognized territory of the State of Israel and the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967, in accordance with our obligations under international law.
We reiterate our call on the government of Israel to halt any activity that makes peace more difficult to achieve. This includes advancement of settlement plans, including at Givat Hamatos, Har Homa, and in E1. All settlements are illegal under international humanitarian law. Settlement construction in these highly sensitive areas threatens to further undermine the viability of a future Palestinian state with its capital in East Jerusalem. We also remain concerned by the continued demolition of Palestinian property and repeated incidents of settler violence. Perpetrators must be held to account.